Hello there. My name is Marjorie, and I suppose you could say everything began with a birthday celebration. Not mine, of course. My sister's. While my daughter was struggling just to breathe in a hospital bed, my mother was busy spending $400,000 on an extravagant birthday party for her, complete with champagne towers, a drone light display, a celebrity chef, and every luxury you could imagine. And when I reached out, when I pleaded for help, they told me they were too occupied. But honestly, that wasn't even the most painful part, because that kind of betrayal, it wasn't new. It was just the final crack in something that had been breaking my entire life. A lifetime of being overlooked, dismissed, erased like I didn't matter. They handed my sister a trust fund the moment she turned 18. Me? I got nothing. They undermined my name, tried to twist public opinion against me, and when that didn't succeed, they turned their attention to my daughter. Now, suddenly, they're the ones calling me, asking for my help. And I find myself caught somewhere between anger and clarity. How do you forgive a family that treats your suffering like it's an inconvenience? How do you shield your child from people who share her blood? And what do you do when the very people who raised you become the ones who nearly destroy you? I was reorganizing the small library nook in my design studio when my phone rang again. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. It could have been a delayed supplier or another one of those scam calls pretending to be the IRS. But something in my chest told me to answer. "Hi, is this Miss Marjorie Hill?" a voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "This is Nurse Alicia from Rosebrook Elementary. Inns has been coughing quite a bit today, and she says she feels lightheaded." The words hit me instantly, like a bucket of cold water. Inns had been dealing with a stubborn cough for weeks, but I had brushed it off as seasonal allergies. Portland's damp weather had been especially harsh this year. "I'll be there in 15, I said, already grabbing my coat and keys. That was my life, constant motion, balancing deadlines, design drafts, and motherhood. Running a boutique interior design studio while raising an 8-year-old on my own didn't leave room for mistakes, but I had managed for years, even if it meant late nights with paint swatches and early mornings filled with school meetings. That evening, as the sky deepened into a dark indigo and a thin drizzle coated the streets, Inz's condition worsened. Her breathing became uneven. She clutched her chest and looked up at me, her eyes unfocused. "Mom, I feel weird," she whispered. Within minutes, I had her in the car, speeding through red lights like nothing else mattered. At the emergency room, everything moved too fast. Doctors rushed her away, while machines beeped in sharp, urgent rhythms. About an hour later, a doctor approached me. He looked exhausted, like he had already delivered too many difficult conversations that day. "There's a congenital malformation in her left lung," he explained, pointing to a blurred scan. "It's restricting her airway. She needs surgery immediately." I nodded, trying to stay grounded as the world around me seemed to tilt. "We can proceed tonight," he added, "but we'll need financial clearance first. The procedure costs $120,000. I blinked, certain I had misheard. "Excuse me?" He repeated the number. My throat tightened. I don't have insurance," I admitted quietly. "We do offer payment plans," he said quickly, "but we'll need a significant deposit up front." I stepped outside into the parking lot, my hands trembling as I stared at my phone. There was only one person left I could call, the one person I had promised myself I never would. Darla, my mother. I hovered over her name, my stomach twisting. But this wasn't about pride anymore. This was about my child. She picked up on the third ring. Music and laughter echoed in the background. "Sweetheart, how are you? It's been so long," she said brightly. "Mom," I began, but she cut in. "Carlin's birthday party is incredible. You should see the ballroom. It looks like a Hollywood event. We even flew in a caterer from Napa. Can you believe it?" I forced my voice to stay steady. "Listen, I don't want to interrupt, but Inz is in the hospital. She collapsed. She needs emergency surgery." There was a brief pause, then a sigh. "Oh, honey, that's terrible." I waited. My breath caught, expecting more, but nothing came. "I need help," I said finally. "The surgery is $120,000. She cut me off again, her tone gentle but firm. "Oh, sweetheart, I wish you had told us sooner. We've already spent over $400,000 on Carlin's party. We can't just cancel everything now. You understand, don't you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mother, who once sewed buttons onto my school uniforms, who used to hold me when I cried, had just told me a party mattered more than her granddaughter's life. I see, I said quietly. Oh, don't be like that. She laughed softly. It's not personal. Carlin only turns 30 once. I ended the call without another word. I stood there in the hospital lobby, completely still. People moved around me, nurses passing by, children being wheeled through the halls. But I felt frozen in place. When I finally blinked, I realized tears were already running down my face. Later that night, I sat alone in the waiting area, scrolling through my phone just to distract myself from the helplessness. That's when I found something I hadn't opened in years. An old scanned PDF buried in my email archives. It was a copy of Carlin's trust fund. She had been given access to a 6-figure inheritance the moment she turned 18. My name wasn't anywhere in that document. No trust, no mention, nothing. And suddenly, everything made sense. The expensive trips she always bragged about, the condo in Santa Monica that had been fully paid for. I had always thought I just hadn't worked hard enough, that maybe I wasn't as driven as she was. But the truth was simpler. They had invested in her future and left me to build mine alone. I sat there with that realization longer than I should have. It didn't bring relief. It didn't even bring anger. It just left me empty. Around 3 a.m, a nurse rushed toward me. She's stable, she said quickly, but her oxygen levels are dropping again. We need a decision soon. I looked down at my bank app. My account was nearly empty. My savings had already been drained by earlier hospital visits. My credit cards were maxed out. I stared at my reflection in the glass. And then I did something I hadn't done in over 10 years. I called my father. The phone barely rang before he answered, his voice sharp and controlled, like he had just stepped away from a business meeting. Marjorie. Hearing his voice after 12 years felt strange, but nothing about it had changed. It was still cold, still calculating. It's me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Inz is in the hospital. She collapsed. They found a problem with her lung. She needs emergency surgery. He didn't ask how she was, didn't ask where we were. Instead, I heard the faint sound of a pen moving across paper. How much? He asked flatly. I hesitated. $120,000. I don't have it. I've tried everything. Mom said, he interrupted immediately. Your mother shouldn't have been your first call. Of course she was, because somewhere deep down, I still believed a mother wouldn't turn her back on her child. But I didn't say that. I just swallowed hard. Leonard cleared his throat. I can help, but I'll need something in writing. I frowned. What do you mean? I'll transfer the money to the hospital, he said, but you'll need to give up any claim to the family trust. You were never formally removed, but it's better to finalize it now. Clean. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Unmoving. So that's what I'm worth, I said quietly, my voice breaking. So that's what I'm worth, I said quietly, my voice breaking. You'll pay for your granddaughter's life, but only if I disappear from yours completely? He didn't deny it. Was this your plan all along? He exhaled, not with regret, but with impatience. Marjorie, everything in life is transactional. This is no different. I ended the call before my anger could overpower what little dignity I had left. My hands trembled as I placed the phone on the bench beside me. How do you grieve parents who are still alive? A memory surfaced like a splinter, one I thought had healed over. It was years ago, sometime during college break. I had walked into my mother's study looking for stamps. Instead, I overheard her on the phone with someone talking about restructuring documents to simplify the trust. You understand, Leonard, she'd said. Then we can't have it split 3 ways. Carlin is the future. She knows how to represent the family. Marjorie, she always goes off script. I didn't understand then. I thought they were talking about speeches or holiday cards. Later, when I tried to ask about it, they both brushed me off. Don't overthink things, Marjorie, had said with that saccharine tone reserved for people she barely tolerated. You're too sensitive, Marjorie. Years later, after Inz was born, I got curious. I contacted William Finch, an attorney who had worked with our family when I was a teenager. He remembered me immediately. In fact, he was the one who first explained what a trust really was. But when I asked if I was part of it, he went quiet. They asked me to draft a removal clause for you, he finally said. I refused. I thought you deserved to know. A month later, they replaced me. He sent me a document he'd saved, a preliminary draft, never executed. My name had been crossed out with a red pen. Too independent, it read in the margins. I should have felt anger, but it was something colder, emptier. They hadn't just cut me out financially. They had erased me, quietly, like I'd never belonged at all. Back in the hospital bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face. My reflection stared back. Hollow eyes, drawn lips, no trace of the woman who once believed in second chances. I leaned over the sink and whispered, "They won't help us, but I will." I opened my phone and started selling everything I could. My car, jewelry, backup laptop, office supplies. My studio space lease was on the chopping block. Next, I drafted an email to a former client, offering to subcontract the biggest project of the quarter, one that was supposed to be my breakthrough. As I pressed send, something shifted inside me. This wasn't defeat, it was something else, something sharper. If I had to burn my old life down to save hers, I'd do it gladly. On my way back to Inz's room, my phone buzzed. The name on the screen stopped me in my tracks. It was Jonah Perez. I hadn't heard from him since 2013. We'd worked together briefly before he moved across the country. The last time we spoke, I had just given birth to Inz. What could he possibly want now? I hesitated, then answered. "Marjorie," his voice was warm, surprised. "It's been a while. I saw the fundraiser someone started for your daughter." I blinked, caught off guard. "I didn't start anything." "Then you should know. It's going viral. And I sent something. It's not much, but check your email. I hope it helps." I checked my email seconds after Jonah hung up. His name sat in bold at the top of my inbox, the subject line reading, "Hope it helps." Attached was a transaction notification, $3,000. No questions, no hesitation, just sent. I blinked at the screen, my mind fogged by 2 nights of hospital chairs and fluorescent lighting. Was it real? I read it again and then again. He didn't even wait for me to ask. There wasn't a single word about payback. Just a simple note. She deserves to live. And we desperately needed that kind of grace. Jonah had always been reserved. I'd mentored him years ago, back when he was a shy intern struggling to assert himself in client meetings. He never said much, but he always listened, really listened. I guess some people grow into quiet heroes. That night, he was mine. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. Jonah had launched a fundraiser. I found the post on his page, an old photo of Inz from her kindergarten recital. Pink dress, tiny ukulele, 1 front tooth missing. She looked so full of light it made my chest ache. His caption read, "She's the daughter of the woman who taught me how to lead with integrity. Let's help her breathe again." I don't know what I expected. Maybe a few kind words, a couple donations at best. But by morning, the donations began trickling in. First a 20, then 50, 100. Some from old clients who remembered the work I'd done. A few from strangers I'd never met. People left comments like, "No child should have to suffer because healthcare is broken. Sending love from Ohio. Hang in there, mama." Each donation felt like a life preserver tossed into a rising tide. I sat by Inz's bedside, her little hand resting in mine, and scrolled through every name on the donor list. I didn't know most of them, but each one meant something. Each one was a tiny spark of hope. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to believe we might actually get through this. That hope lasted 48 hours. It started with a shift in tone, subtle at first. The comments beneath Jonah's post changed. Questions popped up. Why isn't her husband helping? Where's her real family? How do we know this isn't another fake story? At first, I brushed it off. Online trolls were nothing new. I'd seen kind-hearted causes torn to shreds over minor missteps. But this felt different, more coordinated, more personal. Then I saw the story. Carlin's Instagram, champagne glass, cupcake tower, gold lettering in the background spelling her name. The overlay text. Some people will fake anything these days, even a crisis. Stay vigilant, folks. She didn't tag me. She didn't have to. Anyone who knew us, even vaguely, could put the pieces together. Her followers certainly did. They jumped into the comments like wolves. By nightfall, the post had been picked up by a gossip account with over 500,000 followers. The caption, "Carlin hints at family drama. Older sister accused of faking daughter's illness for Pash." The comments were brutal. She's always been dramatic. Didn't she fail at her last business? Desperate much. The worst part? A hashtag started trending. Hashtag sick for sympathy. I sat in the hospital cafeteria, a half-eaten sandwich congealing on the tray beside me, and scrolled through the posts with numb fingers. My face, my pain, had become someone's mid-scroll entertainment. They didn't see the oxygen machine ticking beside Inz's bed. They didn't hear the panic in her breathing, or the quiet prayers I whispered every night. All they saw was a story they could twist into memes and mockery. I told myself not to care, that none of it mattered, that what mattered was Inz. But then I walked back into her room, and the nurse looked at me differently. Not unkind, just cautious. She hesitated, then said, "We've had a few calls, people asking if her case is real." I froze. I wanted to scream, to rip open the blinds and shout, "Come see for yourself. See her hooked up to these wires. Look at her, and tell me this is fake." But I didn't. Because when your own sister publicly cast doubt on your story, strangers take it as permission to do the same. Later that evening, I got a message in my work inbox. It was from a client I'd been collaborating with for over a year, a local kindergarten redesign, a project I'd put heart and soul into. We'd nearly finalized the plans. Just last week, they'd asked me to present to the board. Their message was short, clinical. "Due to recent online attention and reputational risk, we are terminating our partnership effective immediately." I reread the sentence at least 5 times, waiting for my brain to reject it. But it didn't. It just sat there, cold and final. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just stared, hollowed out and still. They weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to erase me. For the next 2 nights, I barely left the hospital. I took calls in the hallway, answered emails from the back stairwell, and slept sitting upright in the blue vinyl chair next to Inza's bed. Her breathing had steadied, but the oxygen tube still hugged her face like a second skin. When I wasn't comforting her, I was trying to figure out how to keep our lives from collapsing completely. My studio's main contract was gone. That kindergarten project wasn't just income, it was credibility. Losing it meant every potential client would see me as a risk. I called 3 of them to reassure them. 1 didn't pick up. The other 2 gave me polite brush-offs and promised to reevaluate next quarter, but we both knew what that meant. Then the bank called. I missed the first attempt. I was helping In sip water when my phone buzzed. By the time I returned the call, the voice on the other end was direct and disinterested.
"You've missed 2 payments on the lease. If we don't receive a minimum balance by next Friday, we'll have to begin proceedings." I said, "I understand," even though I didn't. That afternoon, I made a spreadsheet. I listed everything I could sell. My car already posted online, jewelry from my mother's passed down with love collection. That felt laughable now. My dining table, 2 vintage chairs I used to joke would be my retirement plan, a bookshelf, an iPad, even my grandmother's sewing machine. Inez needed to breathe. If I had to give up every piece of comfort I had left, so be it. The following morning, I arrived at the hospital early. The sun hadn't risen yet. The air outside was biting. I was halfway through folding one of the hospital blankets when someone knocked gently on the doorframe. Theo. He walked in slowly, carrying a brown paper bag from the grocery store and a folded lavender blanket tucked under his arm. "I figured you haven't been home in a while," he said quietly. I didn't realize how badly I needed a familiar face until I saw him standing there in that old pea coat, like nothing in the world could shake him. "Is she awake?" he asked, peeking toward Inez. "Just resting." He pulled out some essentials: applesauce cups, granola bars, hand wipes, a new toothbrush. Then, without a word, he unfolded the blanket and laid it gently over Inez's legs. He didn't ask questions. He didn't pry. And that silence, that quiet presence, said more than any speech could have. As we stood there, the door opened again. This time, it was Avis and Dorian. Avis wore a soft smile, holding a thermos in both hands. Dorian followed with a large box wrapped in blue paper. He set it down without explanation. I didn't need one. They had come, not out of obligation, but love. I offered them chairs. We sat around Inez while she dozed, talking in hushed tones about anything but what was happening. Later, as Theo took Inez to the common room for her daily walk, Avis asked me to join her in the hallway. Her tone changed, serious, steady. "Marjorie," she said, "we have something to tell you." I braced myself. "We sold our house." My breath caught. "Wait, what? You can't. Why would you?" Dorian stepped beside her. "Because she's our granddaughter, and because you're our daughter, even if no paperwork ever said so." My knees buckled. I leaned against the wall for balance. "You'll stay in our place until you're back on your feet," Avis added. "And before you ask, we already signed the contract. No turning back." I tried to speak, but nothing came. She gently placed her hand over mine. "A house can be rebuilt, but you're our home." And then, like she'd been waiting for the right moment all along, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. "This," she said, "is a lease agreement I co-signed on your studio months ago. I didn't want to interfere. I just wanted you to have a net if you ever needed it." It took me a moment to understand. She had guaranteed the space for me long before the drama, long before the world turned against me. Because some people see you, even when you're invisible to others. I hugged them both in the hallway, tears silent and hot on my cheeks. Theo stood nearby, watching us with kind eyes. As I exhaled into Avis's shoulder, I realized something I hadn't dared admit until then. I know who my real family is now, I whispered. And just as I said it, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not grief, peace. But the past doesn't let go just because you found peace. The next morning, I was folding Inez's clothes at the end of her hospital bed when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years. Mom. My hand hovered above the screen. For a moment, I debated letting it ring, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. Her voice was soft, broken almost. Marjorie, we need help. She didn't say hello, no fake warmth, no pleasantries. The bank's going to take the house, she said. Your father won't admit it, but we're out of time. If we don't find the money this week, it's gone. I didn't speak, she added quickly. I know how it sounds, but I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. We thought maybe you could help us.
That word, we, as if there had ever been a united front when I was the one bleeding. My throat felt tight, but my voice came out even. You're asking me? Darla hesitated. Yes, I know it's a lot, but if there's any way. I hung up. Not out of rage, not even sadness, just done. Later that day, I walked to the hospital garden for a minute of air. I was halfway through a cup of weak coffee when my old neighbor Rebecca texted me a screenshot. Carlin's texts. They were in a group chat sent to someone Rebecca knew from work who had posted about the fundraiser online. Somehow they'd leaked. Carlin had written, "If we don't get ahead of this, our name is going to be dragged for years. We need to flip the script. Then, let Mom cry poor, let Dad act distant. I'll post something sentimental later, maybe even an apology. Damage control is about timing. And finally, she can't outlast us. She never could." My fingers tightened around my phone. For a second, I thought I might crush it. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was PR. My own sister, my mother, my father, they weren't crawling back because of guilt. They were drowning in their own mess and thought I'd be too desperate to notice the difference. They didn't want forgiveness. They wanted a reset, the kind where they came out looking clean. That night, I waited until Inz was asleep. Then I sat in the apartment's living room, facing the dim glow of my laptop. I turned on the webcam and pressed record. No filters, no edits, just me. "If you're calling me for help," I began, "you already know who has the power now." I paused, not for effect, but because I needed to feel every word. And I'm not afraid to use it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry, but my stare didn't flinch once. You told the world I was dramatic, that I was lying, that I was reaching for sympathy. And now you want to pretend this never happened? I leaned closer. No. I clicked stop, attached the file to an email, sent it to all three of them. No subject line, no message, just the truth. The family group chat, one I hadn't seen light up since 2014, went dead silent. No response, no dots indicating someone was typing. Just the ghost of their shame sitting in my inbox like an unfinished sentence. I shut the laptop. It was after midnight when I heard my email ping again. I hesitated, then opened it. A new message from my father's assistant. Subject, let's talk. Face to face. Body. They're requesting a meeting. You pick the place. I stared at the screen. They wanted a meeting. What they got was a warning. I chose the meeting place carefully. My studio midday with the soft glow of filtered light bouncing off pale wood floors. The air smelled faintly of lavender and graphite. The walls displayed work I'd finished just weeks before. Sketches of playground layouts, calming color swatches, ideas for spaces that help children breathe easier. It was calm, centered, mine, and for the first time they would meet me on my terms. They arrived as expected, punctual, polished, and pretending. Darla walked in first, overdressed in a cream jacket with pearl buttons and a silk scarf tied around her neck like it meant something. Her oversized sunglasses stayed on indoors, shielding her from truth, or maybe shame. Leonard trailed her, quiet and stiff, not meeting my eyes, the same way he hadn't at the hospital. His presence always felt like an obligation he barely tolerated. And then Carlin. No knock, no greeting, just a heel click and a glance at her phone, as if she had better places to be. I wondered for a moment if she even remembered why she was here. What none of them realized was that I had already gone live. Behind a tall planter, nearly invisible, a small lens blinked red. I had started streaming to a private link 10 minutes before they entered. I didn't tell them. I didn't need to. The camera wasn't for them. It was for me. For every person who had stood by me, who had sent $5 or a kind message, or simply believed I wasn't crazy.
This was their moment too. I stepped forward. I was once made to kneel, I said, my voice even but loud enough to carry, begging for help to save my daughter's life. This time, I want the world to hear your answer. Darla froze. Her hand instinctively clutched her scarf tighter.
Leonard's jaw tensed. Carlin blinked, finally looking up from her phone. "What is this?" she snapped, spotting the red live badge glowing on the monitor behind me. "Let's talk," I said. "Let's talk." Darla's voice quivered. "We thought you were exaggerating. You've always been emotional, Marjorie." I tilted my head. "When I told you your granddaughter might not make it, and you said the money was already spent on Carlin's birthday party, was that just me being emotional too?" She looked away. Leonard remained silent, his hands clasped behind him, like a man in church who'd lost his faith. And Carlin scoffed. "You act like your life is the only one that matters. That party was planned for months. There were sponsors, cameras, deals tied to it." "Deals?" I echoed. "And Inz's lungs? Her life? Was that just poor timing for your business calendar?" The live comments were already rolling in fast and furious. Then, as if fate wanted its own say, my laptop pinged. A viewer had submitted a file, an anonymous video clip. I hesitated, then clicked. Darla appeared on screen, standing in her walk-in closet, facing a large mirror. Her reflection stared back hollow, unbothered. "I'm so sorry for how things played out," she rehearsed, dabbing a tissue under her dry eyes. She paused. "Reset. We failed her. And we're ashamed of that," she repeated, this time slower, leaning into the words like she was fishing for an award. Then Camel's voice off screen. "Slower. Add a sniff. Cry on the second line. People love a redemption arc." I didn't say a word. I just turned the camera to the screen and played it uninterrupted. The chat exploded. Viewers raged. They rehearsed this. This is next-level fake. She's crying over bad PR, not her granddaughter. Darla turned pale. Leonard looked like he might disappear through the wall. Carlin's face flushed with anger, her nails curling into her palms. "You think this changes anything?" she barked. "You think you've won now because of a stupid video?" I looked into the camera, into the eyes of every stranger who ever whispered, "You're being too sensitive." And I said, "I haven't won anything, but now I'm no longer afraid to lose." With one click, I ended the live stream. The morning after the live stream, I was still floating somewhere between exhaustion and disbelief when a knock rattled my apartment door. It wasn't the mail carrier or a neighbor bringing over casserole. It was a woman in a slate gray blazer, clipboard in one hand, an official badge clipped to her chest. "Marjorie Lane?" she asked, scanning the apartment behind me. I blinked, still in my robe, gripping a lukewarm mug of coffee. "Yes." She handed over a sealed envelope. "I'm from the Department of Human Services. There's been an anonymous report. We're required to conduct a wellness check today." My fingers tightened around the envelope as the hallway seemed to contract inward. "What kind of report?" She didn't flinch. "Concerns about your emotional stability and potential neglect of your child." From my Inz's room, I heard a small cough, soft but sharp, like a warning bell. I instinctively turned toward the sound, and the woman followed my gaze. "May I come in?" she asked. My voice cracked. "Of course." Once inside, she moved quietly but with purpose, checking the kitchen, peeking inside the fridge, noting the prescriptions in the bathroom cabinet. She asked if I'd ever been treated for depression. She asked how often I saw her doctors. She asked if anyone else lived here or visited regularly. By the end, my hands were shaking. I felt like I'd just taken a midterm I didn't know I'd been studying for my whole life. As soon as she left, I called Theo. She asked about our grocery list. I said, my voice fraying, the vitamins in the drawer, even the temperature in Inz's room. I explained every damn bandage and every jar of baby food like I was under trial. A beat of silence passed on the line. "You know who did this, don't you?" Theo said finally. "It's got stink all over it." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. "I'm calling in help," she added. "You're not doing this alone." That night, I sat beside Inz, her tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm with the beeping machines. I thought about all the battles I'd already fought, scraping together surgery money, begging my parents for basic humanity, surviving the media storm they started. I thought it was over. But now they weren't just attacking my name, they were coming for my child. The next day, Theo arrived with someone new,
A woman in a crisp navy suit, hair pulled back tight, carrying a leather satchel that looked like it had seen a courtroom or two. "This is Katrina Morse," Theo said. "Child Advocacy Network. She's fierce." Katrina gave a firm nod. "I'm here to make sure no one takes your daughter without a damn good reason." We sat at my table while Katrina combed through documents, screenshots Theo had pulled, metadata from the report. The concern had been submitted through a proxy server registered to Fairstone PR, Carlin's PR firm. "They didn't even try to hide it," Katrina muttered. "That's how certain they were no one would push back." I laughed bitterly. Well, now they're about to find out I'm not scared anymore. The following morning, we marched into the county courthouse, Katrina beside me, Theo just behind. The moment I handed in the complaint was surreal. I had spent months feeling small, like I didn't matter, like I was just noise in a world too busy to hear me. Now I was the storm. The complaint was official: defamation, intentional interference with custodial rights, and false reporting with malicious intent. No more begging, no more defending. This was a fence. As we stepped back out into the light, Inez walked beside me, sipping juice from a tiny box packed by Theo. The air was crisp, almost celebratory. It smelled like sidewalk chalk and new leaves. I looked down at my daughter's hand in mine, and then back at the courthouse doors we'd just come through. "Next time she comes for us," I whispered, "I won't wait to defend myself. I'll be ready." I didn't reply to the assistant's email right away. Instead, I read it twice, then again. I let the silence sit there, not as a punishment, but as a statement. I was no longer the one waiting. 2 days later, I responded with one line: "You want to meet? Fine. Come to my office. Tuesday, noon sharp. Bring nothing but yourselves." When the day arrived, I made sure every camera in my studio lobby was working. My assistant Janelle cleared the space, except for one security guard I trusted, and an audio tech who'd signed an NDA. A small black suitcase sat on the glass table in the center of the room. At 11:58 a.m., the elevator dinged. They walked in like they'd rehearsed it. Darla in a beige shawl, Leonard in a stiff blazer, and Carlin in sunglasses far too large for an indoor setting. I didn't stand. I didn't greet them. "You asked for a face-to-face," I said. "This is as close as it gets." They hesitated before sitting. There was tension in the air so thick it muffled sound. Darla looked at the suitcase. "Is that $200,000 from the fundraiser?" "What's left after legal bills, studio payments, and my daughter's care?" Leonard leaned forward slightly. "We didn't expect this." "You never expect consequences," I replied. "That's part of the problem." Darla swallowed and reached for the handle, brushing the polished leather like it might bite her. I watched her. "Before you touch that, know this. Once you take it, we are finished for good." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Carlin scoffed. "Is this another one of your dramatic performances?" I ignored her and kept my eyes on my mother. "This isn't forgiveness. It's not trust. It's not some weird final olive branch. This is a severance package." Darla's hand paused. Her lip trembled. "You're giving this to us?" "No," I said slowly. "I'm giving it away so I can walk away, so you can't say I owe you anything ever." The silence that followed cracked something inside me. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. Twist S7 had landed, and the air shifted in the room like something sacred had just been broken. Carlin stood abruptly. "You think this makes you better than us?" "No." I said, "It makes me free." By Thursday morning, the footage had leaked again. Not by me, though. I'd left the studio security feed running for a reason. Someone else had uploaded the clip. Maybe Janelle, maybe the audio tech, maybe one of the building's guards who'd seen too much over the past few months. But by the time Inez finished her morning checkup, the clip had gone viral. The suitcase scene was trending. Darla's teary-eyed. "This money means so much." Speech didn't hit the way she thought it would. Not when people already knew how she'd rehearsed the last one in front of a mirror. Brand deals dropped Carlin like a bad check. Leonard's name was quietly scrubbed from the board of 3 nonprofits. Darla's spa online reviews tanked it overnight. It wasn't revenge, it was exposure. And exposure didn't need a sword, it just needed a light. A week later, Inez and I sat on a park bench near the duck pond we used to visit when things were simpler. She rested her head on my shoulder. I sipped bad coffee from a paper cup.
The world hadn't changed, but I had. Will Grandma ever come back? Inez asked, her voice sleepy. I brushed a crumb from her sleeve. She already did, I said. And then she left again. I didn't say it with bitterness, just finality. 6 months later, spring came early to Portland. The cherry blossoms outside my apartment cracked open, like they'd waited all winter just to say, "You made it." The air smelled faintly of fresh soil and rosemary. Theo had planted a small herb garden by the side fence, and Inz helped water it every morning in her dinosaur rain boots, even when the sky was clear. I stood at the edge of the yard, wiping my hands on a towel, watching Theo and Inz crouched side by side, pressing basil stems into soft earth. "You think it'll survive?" Theo asked. "Half to me, half to the dirt." "Better than we did," I said, smiling. There was no need to say more. My studio had bounced back. New clients, most of them referred by folks who had followed the livestream saga, filled our calendar. We'd even landed a project renovating a shelter for single moms. Funny how life loops back when you let it. Inez, now attending school full-time again, had regained color in her cheeks. Her appetite returned. Her laugh, once hesitant and small, now echoed through our apartment daily. She was strong. We both were. But there were moments. Sometimes I'd catch a song playing at the grocery store, something from the era when I still hoped Carlin would be proud of me, or that my mom might remember my birthday without a Facebook notification. A flicker of an old photo on my timeline, a smell from a childhood dish, a certain word Inez used without knowing its weight. The ache never left. It just softened. It no longer dictated my mornings. It didn't stain my nights. It simply lived there like scar tissue under skin. Not gone, but no longer tender to the touch. Healing, I'd learned, wasn't a goal. It was a rhythm. No one from the other side ever reached out again, not even after the news ran stories about Leonard's frozen accounts, not after Carlin's last influencer deal went under and she quietly deactivated all her social platforms. She moved to Florida, someone told me, went dark. Even her PR firm changed its name. And Darla, her spa closed. Yelp took care of that in under 3 weeks. But I didn't gloat. I didn't screenshot headlines or forward links. I didn't say, "See, they deserved this." Because it was never about watching them fall. It was about learning how to stand. That night, we had dinner at home, our family, the one I chose. Theo made her famous skillet lasagna. Dorian brought his sourdough bread. Avis baked a peach cobbler so sweet it tasted like Sunday mornings in Georgia. Inez helped set the table, carefully placing napkins at each plate like they were crystal. She wore her new school backpack through the whole meal, refusing to take it off. "I want to be ready," she said proudly. "For tomorrow," Theo winked at her. "That's my girl." Laughter filled the kitchen. No cameras, no scripts, no tension behind smiles. Just a room filled with people who had shown up and stayed. Later, while everyone was finishing dessert, I stepped onto the balcony with a glass of water. The city pulsed below, calm and wide. I took a long breath. I thought of everything it had taken to get here. Every insult swallowed, every phone call ignored, every day I showed up, even when no one else did. And I thought of the question Inez had asked months ago in that park. Will Grandma ever come back? The answer lived in my bones now. Blood might connect us, but love is the only thing that makes someone worth calling family. You know, if you'd asked me a year ago what strength looked like, I might have said something like never crying or never backing down. But I've learned something much harder and more honest. Strength isn't about pretending you're unbreakable. It's about rebuilding yourself after you've been broken and choosing not to become like the people who shattered you. I used to think love had to come from the people who raised you, but now I know family is built on choice, not blood, loyalty, not obligation, and forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the fire that burned you. To anyone out there who feels overlooked, unloved, or betrayed by their own family, I see you. I was you. You are not alone. And your story doesn't end with their rejection. It starts with your decision to rise anyway. Because healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just showing up, planting something small, and watching it grow in your own time. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to protect you? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story hit home for you, or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And hey, if this video made you feel seen or gave you even a moment of hope, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next real story that might just speak to your heart. This is Marjorie's story, but maybe in some ways it's yours too. Thanks for being here.